Hey, welcome back to my channel. This is Spirit Soul Sense, information for your soul. Today, I am interviewing, or like I like to say, having a conversation with Chelsea Cora of the Soulful Self podcast. She is a podcaster. She is a public speaker. She is a divine messenger. We met online because we're aligned. And I absolutely love her radiance, light energy. When we connect, it's so beautiful. So we're going to be talking mostly about relationships. Y'all know I love to talk about relationships, but I think Chelsea has some unique perspectives on topics. And I would love to have this conversation with her. So the first question I have, actually, is there anything you want to say to the people?
Oh, I want to say, hey, thank you for having me. I'm so
Yeah.
excited to be here. It's an honor and a privilege.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. So my first question is about loneliness. I think there was an article I saw somewhere that talked about the anxiety epidemic. I made these list of questions a while ago. Okay. So forgive me, people, all the things. Y'all didn't come here for perfection. So thank you for rocking with me. But I want to make this point about, during the pandemic, it was really highlighted that a lot of people living alone were experiencing anxiety. And then even recently, I've been seeing a lot of discussion, even with my clients, right? So like I'm like full in my private practice. But even with my clients, there's a lot of um, emptiness, emptiness, not being comfortable being alone, and then people like literally feeling lonely. So what are your thoughts on loneliness?
Yes, I think this question is super relevant because it does describe a very common experience in today's culture, right? We're described as the age of connection by having internet and information and people at our fingertips, yet we are also isolated and disconnected. And the thing that really sums this concept up best for me is a quote by Rupi Kaur that states, "Loneliness is a sign that you are in desperate need of yourself."
Ooh,
Yes. And
ooh.
that
Loneliness is a sign that you are in desperate need of yourself.
that's right. Of yourself. Yes,
Okay.
because I think that loneliness is us trying to get something outside of ourselves, to find wholeness outside of ourselves, rather than looking within, rather than actually facing ourselves and learning how to be with ourselves. And I know this to be a firsthand experience for me because I, until about a year ago, lacked the ability to truly be with myself. I remember I had just gotten out of a 2-year-long committed relationship, and I moved to a new city where I was all by myself. And I had this vision that when I came here, I was going to magnetize all these beautiful friendships, and it wasn't happening. And I was just left with myself and my coping mechanisms. And I had to sit with that and work through that and be there for my inner child and work with my healer and do shadow work and all these things. And it led me on a journey of discovering my true self, which is my God self, because we are all extensions of source. We're all extensions of God. And when we get in touch with that, we learn that we really can be our own best friends. And we don't need anybody else to make us feel happy, whole, or complete, whether it's a friend or partnership or family member or whatever. And it's important to give those things to ourselves because we do need human interaction, but not to come at it from a place of neediness and woundedness. So that's my answer.
Oh gosh. Okay. Essay A++. Oh, beautiful. That's clip worthy. Oh my gosh. I like words to settle. Ooh,
Okay,
dang.
yeah.
That was really, really beautiful. It made me think of my own period of loneliness. I had a similar experience of moving to a new state. Well, moving from back home, right? An island to a state. I wasn't interested in magnetizing people. Because I feel like I have my people, right? But all of my people were in different places and none were there with me. And like coming from a big family, living together, there's always like background noise, right? Always somebody doing something, always somebody having a conversation. Being by myself with silence left me feeling so vulnerable, so empty, so emotional. It's like, what is this? What is this? Because previous to that, I had always been in a relationship, right? I think I was 23, right? Right since the time you start dating, I was always like booed up or in conversation with someone. And I had to do similar work with therapy and shadow work. And I had a healer. I had a lot.
She
I
had an
had a lot to,
entourage.
yeah, which is, part of like having this platform is really about helping people and helping people understand that you're not alone. And a lot of the things that you're going through, other people are also going through. And there's sort of a blueprint, recommendations for how you can improve yourself. So like I've literally gone to therapy. I've had a healer. I've bought the workbooks. I've bought the self-help books. I've done a lot of journaling, good grief, a lot of journaling to make sure that I got good with myself. And so that exactly like your quote says from Rupi, I love her poetry. It's about looking inward. And I also frame it as because the God, right? The God in each of us is flowing, right? Or wants to flow or wants to not be blocked from your experience. And so I think when people tap into God, then they feel the wholeness, they feel the worthiness instead of the loneliness, right? I think it's normal to feel lonely. I think especially in 2022, in the social media age where connection doesn't necessarily mean authentic.
No, not at all.
Right? Oh my gosh, all the time. And when I notice when I am in a negative space and I go on social media, I'm like, oh my God, that's fake. Oh my God. Right? I'm just like, oh my God, that's fake. Versus when I'm in a good one, I'm like, well, I wish you well. This is a beautiful picture. Who knows? I wish you well.
Yeah, your mood
I
can
wish you
determine a
well.
lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love what you said about like your own process in becoming good with yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been very medicinal for me, and I wish that for everybody.
Same. Same. Yeah. Yeah. And then, having more therapy clients, I would say, reminds me more, or it's more palatable how many people are in pain. Like I think I know intellectually, right? Most people are not standing in the light most of the time. They're struggling. They're having a hard time. They're having difficulties with boundaries. They're having difficulties being alone, difficulties sleeping. But like my therapy clients just really remind me that people are yearning for help. And I think your podcast is one of those bright spots that folks can look to.
Thank
Mine
you.
too.
Yeah, the work that we both do in the world.
Yeah. There's so many light workers and healers who are literally doing the work. So thank you. Yeah, I'm so glad you're here.
Me too. It's great to be here.
Yay. Okay. So moving from loneliness, this is unrelated, but I thought you have really interesting views on poly relationships. I think poly, as in, if you've never heard the term poly relationships, it's relationships where there are more than two people. Relationships where there are more than two people in a romantic relationship. And so Chelsea has some interesting, and I think we differ in this regard. So I really want to hear your perspectives on poly relations. Like, what do you think about them in general? Do you think they work? We say, right? I mean, 50% of marriages end in divorce. Do they work? So work is a relative term, but what are your thoughts?
Yes, of course. This is a hot topic. So
I know.
poly meaning polyamorous, right? Where, yeah, you have a situation in which two people are in a relationship and maybe three people are in a relationship together, or maybe those individuals are dating other people. There are scenarios where people have a primary relationship with one partner and then they might have secondary partners, or there are solo poly people who are kind of just in their own space, like their primary relationship is with themselves and then they date other people outside of that. So there's a lot of different ways that it can look. And I think that it depends on the individual. I think that people really have to follow their own truth and their own authentic desires when it comes to what type of relationship that they want to be in. And having said that, I do know people, there are many people in my network who are doing it successfully and happily. And so I think that that's amazing for them. And it was something that I was intrigued by in my journey, that I read a book about called The Ethical Slut.
Okay.
And kind of like learned about, but ultimately I have decided that when I'm ready to meet my divine partner, that it's going to be a monogamous relationship, more likely than not. I'm open to it looking different than that, but I think I really value one-on-one connection personally, because that's just what speaks to my deepest truth. Yeah, but I think it's different for everybody. And I think that there's no right or wrong way to have a human experience. So I think that a lot of things could work.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say something different.
What do you think I was going to say, girl?
You're going to be like, no, poly relationships are bad.
Okay. I wasn't sure what you thought.
Something different. So I have a video on my channel that's called Monogamy is Unnatural.
Oh, okay.
And I talk about nature and about like how easy it is to feel physical attraction, just like, so it's like a biological explanation for why monogamy is so difficult and why it's not often found in nature. I think exactly like you say, people should do what works for them. I think it's difficult in the modern world when women have so much agency and they can make their own money right? So like the partnership is not then for a financial reason. It's more like about love. And I just like spending time with you. And this is how we do it, versus like this transactional or exchange that typically happens. I'm not, okay. So I think I use the example of these porn stars. Am I allowed to call them porn stars? I feel like everybody that does porn is a porn star. I don't people who their profession is, on camera sex work, right? And there's this one couple. I mean, I'm a consumer of porn, right? So I also say that in the video. I'm a consumer of porn. I really respect it and people who engage in it mindfully. I just think it's a difficult thing to engage in mindfully. But there's this one couple, and I've forgotten their names. I left it in a comment in one. Not Diamond. What's her name? The point is, it's one of the few times that I saw people creating porn mindfully. I feel like I hadn't seen, right? Because I feel like a lot of it is, but just in general in the world, people are just about selling money, selling things to get money. And so this is just an extension of that. You're right. People could be selling soap and not doing it mindfully. I just think because sex is such a spiritual experience, that taking the spirituality out of it then sort of reduces it to just an act like washing a car. And I'm not sure that's what it was created for, right? I think it was really created to inspire, to enliven, all that thing. So that's just the sex part, right? I think polyamorous relationships where there are multiple people are difficult because relationships in general are difficult. Even just being in a monogamous relationship, right? I think it's hard. And I think more communication, more openness, more trust is required for polyamorous relationships to work. So I'm not like an advocate of them, or I'm not like against it like you. I mean, I had considered as well being in a polyamorous relationship, being like a second wife kind of thing. And then just ultimately deciding my desire at that time, or it wasn't even a desire, but like, okay, right. I've been like okay, maybe I could do this. Okay. That came from a not enough place, right? I think there's a difference between settling. We were talking off camera about settling, and just going to get along versus this is something I truly desire, and it helps me feel just more love, and I have so much more love to give that this is then what I do. But I think my biggest advocacy is around people don't belong to us.
Yes,
And
I agree.
even in a monogamous relationship, like I mean, y'all are partnered, but they're still their own person. And this, it's mine. I don't think I feel like that either. So yeah, I think I have an openness to even just have the conversation about, well, here is how we're doing it now. I don't know what it would look like in 5 years, but I have this openness for us to discuss, like, what do we want? Like, what would work? Because I feel like the Esther Perel's book, Meeting in Captivity, have you followed Esther Perel?
I know who she is, yeah.
I really enjoy the way she talks about relationships, and I really, really like her book, Meeting in Captivity, because I feel like it really speaks to the current difficulties in modern dating. But more than that, I just like how she talks about long-term relationships. So many people are just talking about the dating phase and like, okay, now we like each other, and now we're not afraid. Now we're not afraid to show our true selves because we like each other. But what about 10 years down the road? What about 20 years down? How do you, right? Because people break up after 30 years. It's not a thing that you just decide year one, okay, we're committed, and then the commitment is over. It's always an ongoing dating each other process, even in a committed relationship, which I think is really missing from the online dating sphere people discussion.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And that's funny because I thought that you were gonna be the one that's like polyamory is bad.
Oh, really? No. It's actually I consider it to be like one of my specialties in working with other people, because
Oh, that's awesome.
I can help them learn the language for what is okay and what's not okay, right? Because like you said, everybody is different in what they want. And some people want to feel like the primary relationship. So like, even what does that look like? What does it look like to be the primary couple? Like how is that different from if you date other people? So yeah, so I'm very open. I'm very open to people living however they want to live their life, in joy and in happiness.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's how therapy should be.
Right?
Yeah.
I think, not to toot my own horn, but toot. I get a number of clients that are firing their previous therapists, and they're just like,
oh,
you're so great.
Yay.
Yeah, so it really, it's the like validation that, I really enjoy the work I do, and I'm actually really effective and helpful. So it's like, oh, it's all in sync. I love that.
Yes, you're in your zone of genius.
Yeah, in my zone. Yes, so good. Okay. So, do you think polyamorous relationships, I'm dropping my phone. Do you think polyamorous relationships are a trend in the Western world, or you think they will be here to stay?
I think that they will be here to stay, because I think that for a lot of people, they do work, right? Like there are whole sub communities around it. People have written books about it. There's podcasts about it. They're thriving.
Yes, I agree. Well, I thought we were gonna disagree about something by
That's
now.
funny. That's funny.
I was like, your perspectives. Okay, so in one of your podcasts, you talked about Essene mirrors. Am I saying that right?
Essene, yep, you are.
Essene mirrors and relationships as mirrors. helping us to evolve. And I would love for you to explain to folks, right? Because this is the first time I had heard about this. I'd
Okay.
love for you to explain what is that?
Okay, yeah, I know, right? Okay. So relationship mirrors has been a huge concept that has helped me to see myself more clearly and to grow and heal and evolve in my spiritual journey. And the way that I personally typically understand mirrors to work is that they show us our shadow self, right? The parts of us that we are subconsciously rejecting, suppressing, denying. They will also mirror to us our own wounding, our own childhood wounding, right? Through triggers, things that elicit strong emotional reactions from us. Also, they mirror the relationship that we have with ourselves. If we find ourselves in a relationship, could be a friendship, a family member, a partner, anyone, in which, for example, we are not feeling listened to, we're not feeling considered, we're not feeling validated, then we have the opportunity to look at how we are treating ourselves and find out where we are not listening or validating our own self. Right. Okay. And then also they mirror the energy that we're putting out into the world.
Okay.
If I am stealing things from Walmart,
It's a very specific example.
I know. I actually am going back to like when I was 19 and I got
Okay.
my car stolen. Like I had things stolen from me and I would be like, why, universe? Why? Because I would justify it like, stealing from a corporation doesn't matter because they are immoral or whatever.
Yeah.
This was a long time ago. I'm 30 years old now. Okay. I'm like not like this anymore.
Got you.
But so I didn't understand why I was constantly the victim of theft. But it was because I was stealing, right? And so it doesn't matter. I remember in Marianne Williamson's book, A Return to Love, she says the universe doesn't differentiate between stealing from an elderly woman and stealing from a large corporation. You're still putting out that energy and it's going to come back. Okay, so that's like my personal synopsis of relationship mirrors. And then it goes deeper into the teaching of the Essene mirrors. So the Essenes were a sect of people in where was it? In Israel, like over 2,000 years ago, and they studied mysticism and they left behind certain teachings. And so there's this spiritual teacher by the name of Greg Braden, who is pretty popular. He's been on a lot of different documentaries on Gaia and all these things. And he has this 2-hour YouTube video that documents these live workshops that he did around the Essene mirrors. And these are 7 mirrors or 7 universal challenges that human beings will walk through on their spiritual journey. And it just sheds more insight onto the nuances and the complexities of the whole idea that the world, not just relationships, but the world is a mirror. So this was helpful to me in understanding certain things that I was going through in my life, because sometimes when we just hear the world is a mirror, it can seem simple, but it's not. Like there are a lot of areas that are very multi-layered within our experience. So I will say what they are, the 7 Essene mirrors. Okay. The first one is a mirror of the moment. And this is the most simple one. This is like what goes around comes around type of stuff, very straightforward. And the second one is the mirror of judgment. So this one it's showing you, confronting you with the things that you judge in your life, that you hold judgments against. The third one is the mirror of lost love. And this one happens whenever we see somebody who we are like immediately attracted to. And basically why we are so attracted to them is because we are seeing something in them that we have lost or given up at some point. And so we have the opportunity to, rather than falling in love with all these different people, right? Because we all meet people who we feel attraction to. Yeah. And sometimes people will mistake that for a reason to, get married and have kids and all these things, and then get divorced, like you said, 20, 30 years later, because it doesn't work out, right? And so when we become aware of how they're mirroring our own selves back to us, then we can use that and say, okay, where is this in me? How can I reclaim this part of myself? And I can use my previous relationship as an example, where my previous partner was like really funny and really playful. And I love that about them, about her. She's a woman.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, if I am not with her, I won't experience this level of joy in my life. And then my healer, my mentor, pointed out to me that all the things that I love about her are parts of myself that I need to reclaim. And once I started doing the work to do that, I found that actually I was having supreme amounts of joy in my life, and I didn't need anybody else to garner that for me.
Oh,
So yeah, so that's an example.
I love
Um,
that.
Thank you. Thank you. And then, okay, number 4 is the mirror of compulsion or obsession. And
Okay.
this mirror can manifest in any of the things that we might develop an addictive relationship with, like food, sex, alcohol, drugs. And the reason why it's a mirror is because we are outsourcing an experience that we can actually get within ourselves by reaching for these things. So if we are dependent on caffeine for energy, which this one hits home for me.
Do you like coffee?
Yes,
Okay.
I do. But then we can actually kind of channel that state and source our energy from within ourselves. Like an actual thing that you can do is sit down and close your eyes and remember how you felt when you're drinking the caffeine, or for other people it might be alcohol, which gives us the courage to be outgoing and sociable and likable and all the things, right? But if we channel how it felt, that energy of being sociable and being ourselves or having high energy, then we can actually be our own source for all of those things that we are compulsively looking outside of ourselves for.
Yes.
So there's that mirror. And then there's the number 5, which is the mirror of the sacred or the parental relationship. Okay. And this one is pretty deep because this one talks about how the relationship that we had with our caregivers, whether we had a mother and father in the home, or we had a single parent, or we were raised by our grandparents or someone else, the relationship of the people who raised us mirrors how we feel about God, basically, and also how we feel about the universe. Mm-hmm. So if we had a parent who was very critical of us, who wasn't there for us, or some of these things, then that's what we expect the world to be. You know, we expect that we're not going to have the support that we need, or that we're always going to be judged and criticized when we try to do something. And then the opposite is also true, right? Like if we had parents who were supportive, and it can be complicated, it can be all of these things together, you know, then we feel supported by life, and we feel like we can do things and have it be perceived well. And so if you did have a mother-father situation in the home, then I think Greg Braden, he calls it, I forgot what he called it now, but he's basically saying that it's like your surrogate mother and your surrogate father, because they were simply the conduits for you to come into this life and be, right? And so he says that they mirror your relationship with your heavenly father and your heavenly mother, which are kind of like the divine feminine and the divine masculine, because there's both, right? There's that polarity. And when we separate from source and we come into this realm, then we are embodying one of those polarities typically.
Yeah,
right?
one more than the other usually.
Right.
There's special halfway. I don't mean to do this weird.
Intersex.
Yeah, there's intersex, but then there's also people who exist in androgyny, right? They might be just biologically one, but their energy is really, really like half and half.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's a choice that we make when we come, like after we get here and we go through the things that we go through, like the societal conditioning. And sometimes those decisions can also be trauma informed. Like, you know,
well, no, you probably didn't see this. These TikToks, there's so many of them, right? I saw a video, I kind of rolled my eyes at it, right? Because I have a soapbox on Umar Johnson. Umar, is it Johnson his name is? The pro-Black, who cares? He says he's a psychologist, and he explains LGBT, right? He conceptualizes LGBT as being the result of trauma.
Okay.
And I hate that.
Hmm.
I don't like it at all. I don't like it at all because most people experience trauma,
Yeah.
right? Almost all of us have left childhood with something. Most people are not LGBT, right? And this is not to take away from the fact that, right, his this TikTok was really about I think he was, I don't even know if he was abused by a man or a woman, sexually abused, but it did lead him to question earlier than is typical for kids, which I think is the point that a lot of people try to make in trauma, like understanding trauma. But the point I really want to make is most people have been through trauma, and LGBT people still make up like 6% of the population. It's not like they're half of the, it's so tiny. It's right. And this is consistent across the world. I think more people are feeling comfortable, being their whole selves. But people usually know when they're like in second grade, right? I like him or her. So this is another one of my soapboxes, because I don't like, because I often feel like it's used to demonize people, and to make it sound like a choice. Not that some people don't choose to be curious, but that when people are presenting themselves and saying, this is how I always am, that somebody then says, no, you can't be that way because weren't you abused in childhood? Well, most people have been through something. Like the most recent estimates on girls sexual abuse is like 4 out of 5. It's like, well, Black girls, I think it's 3 out of 5. For across races, it is so high, right? Abuse is so high that I think if it was really like a cause and effect, we would see a better correlation with the two of them, right? People who are sexually abused would then be bisexual or questioning or something in, or more frequently. But when a person is in front of me and is saying, well, this is my experience, and I know people who've also had this experience, I like to validate that, right? But now when it's coming from a place of I heard and I think, right? I'm citing studies that have been done. It's just one of my things. But I hear you.
No, that makes a lot of sense, right? It's like it's not a clear-cut formula that people who experience this type of trauma end up being gay.
Right.
Okay.
Right. That's it. And that's it. Not that it can't lead you to being frustrated or confused or, questioning or exploring things you probably wouldn't have explored if you hadn't had the experience, but it's just not a cause and effect.
Okay, so what I want to say about that is, okay, so this spiritual teacher, Greg Braden, who, resurrected these Essene mirror teachings, and gave them to the world. His explanation of this is that, so when we are a part of God, when we're part of source energy, like before we come into the human body, we are whole because we are both feminine and masculine. And so the idea is that our soul chooses one. It chooses to align with one or the other.
Okay.
And that's the type of body that it incarnates into.
Yeah.
And so when the soul comes in here, there's like this immense feeling of separation. And so if you're coming in here and you're born with female parts, you're yearning for that male counterpart, like that masculine counterpart, to complete the polarity.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's the idea, right? And then when people come in here and maybe they are in a female body, and this actually happened to me.
Okay.
Of like having an experience somewhere along the way that made it feel not safe to express that femininity. And so I started identifying more with masculinity. And so then the closest thing to wholeness would be to be attracted to that femininity. Okay. And so that's kind of like, that's his like spiritual explanation of it. right? And yeah, so it's not like making it right or wrong, or
Yeah. Does he
because
say it's well, right? Because then my next question would be like about his explanation for trans. But if your soul has picked one, right? Your soul has picked a masculine energy predominance, but you're born into a female body. That's
wait,
the spiritual
if
explanation.
no, the spiritual explanation is that your soul chose to align with being a female, and then when you get here, you experience trauma, and
You
also,
choose.
and well, it's not like a conscious choice, right? Because so much of our that drives our behavior comes from the subconscious. So it ends up being the way that we are. But it has, like, it can probably be traced back to something. And it doesn't mean that that person needs to uncover that and change. Like, they could align with being gay their whole life, right? And that's beautiful and that's perfect. And that's also what their soul came here to do. It doesn't make it wrong. It's just an explanation of energy.
That's okay. What's his name? Greg Braden.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
Greg
go look him
Braden.
up. Okay,
I
but
don't
wait,
know.
I
I don't
want
know
to
if
say
I
more
see
though.
you there.
I want to say more, because the thing about gender, right, is
Yeah.
gender expression is a societal construct.
Right.
So we get born into the body of a female, and we get all of these pressures and expectations placed upon us that are human constructs.
Right.
And that alone causes so much damage, because what if I don't align with that? What if I don't want to play with dolls and wear pink just because I'm born with this anatomy?
Yeah.
What if I want to explore everything, and I'm not allowed to, and I resent that, and that is trauma, and so then that's when people feel a need, I think, to align with non-binary gender, or to switch genders, or to do this and that, because they're just searching for authenticity in a society that wants to define who they are for them.
Okay. I mean, you've heard of Two-Spirit.
Oh yeah, Two-Spirit. Yeah. And that's another thing.
What is that? Did they choose to be Two-Spirit?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I think right, because we're young and we live in very modern times. But I think these things were going on all the time.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, not new.
Okay, but that's the thing though. It's like
the trauma of you think no. Okay.
No. Because Two-Spirit doesn't exist in a box.
Okay.
Right? It's our modern society that says you were born with that genitalia, you're not Two-Spirit, you're a female, and you need to act like one.
Okay.
Right? And so that person, maybe they genuinely feel Two-Spirit, and then there's a lot of trauma around that, because that's not really accepted in our society, right? Or maybe they feel like I
guess I was thinking non-binary is the modern way of saying Two-Spirit.
Yeah, I think they're different.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think Two-Spirit is a spiritual calling, and not every non-binary person is spiritual.
Spiritual. Okay.
But I think that they are looking for their authenticity somehow, and that's a way that they have found to express it.
You would say that's like most of the case?
Most of who?
Most of the cases of people who are not non-binary are searching for something.
Well, I think that we're all searching for authenticity, right? Like we're all trying to find out who we are and how we feel the most comfortable. And those are the subcultures that we gravitate towards.
Okay.
And the ways that we try to express ourselves.
Searching for authenticity. I know you're not done with the mirrors yet.
That's okay. I know we're going deep.
I know, but you just said that, and it made me think about, right? One of my next questions is about strip clubs and.
Okay, wait.
I know, right?
We gotta finish this
You're
conversation.
right, you're right. But
No.
I'm getting your point about everybody searching for something and they do it in different ways.
And they do it from a certain level of awareness.
Okay. Okay.
Right? Because I was in a relationship with a woman and I really wanted to be gay, to be honest, like, because that was what made me feel authentic at the time. But when I did more inner child work and I did more unpacking, and I realized the reason why I was in a relationship with a woman was because I was afraid my whole life to be intimate with a man.
Okay.
And when I got to heal that, I realized that I love men. I love being in a relationship with men because they, they express their masculine and I express my feminine, and it works. Whereas in the relationship with the woman, I felt like I was expressing my masculine to the point of exhaustion. And so it doesn't mean that I'm not attracted to women. I think that women are beautiful and I would love to have more sensual sexual experiences with them in my life, but I want a partnership with a man. And that's another thing, is that, being gay, being straight, I think that if we lived in a culture where it was safe to just openly explore your sensuality,
Yeah.
that queerness would actually be the norm.
Yes, yes. I view it as a spectrum, and very few people are 100% straight, and very few people are 100%. I only like the opposite sex. Yeah, I would completely agree with you there.
Yeah.
Our society is very rigid.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Do you have any more like questions or points that you want to make
No.
about the gender stuff? Because I know it's controversial, actually, like this
Um,
explanation.
I hear your perspective, right? And I don't think it's the norm. I don't, based on the research that I have read, I don't think your perspective is the norm. I think most
No,
people who, but then there's also the, like you say, the unconscious part of it. But I think most people who identify as LGBT will say, I had my first crush when I was in first or second grade. There
yeah.
wasn't any big traumatic experience. It's just I liked them, right? And then
Yeah.
once you get into, right, it's like I've always felt this way.
Okay.
And that's right. I'm not right. Most people don't. But then I read this book, but what's the point? This I don't even know her name, but she was in a relationship with a man. And when I read the book, I was like, the way she talks about partnership with men is unlike any, it was strange. It was weird. The way she described sex with a man, right? She was married to a man. The way she described it, it sounded like a nightmare. And I was like, what is why is this happening? And I read it and I was like, this is strange. I'm gonna put all the things in the description boxes. Like there's so many points here. But she's lesbian, right? She was on Oprah, and it's so funny. Like I before I finished the book, I had seen that, wait, no, she's getting a divorce. No, wait, she's in a relationship with a woman. I don't think that's most people's experiences. I think most people can relate to pretending something in life, right? Or striving for perfection, or striving for approval, or striving for validation. And this was one way that she did it. I don't think she'd even considered I could be in a relationship with a woman. It was just like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And so I married a man and had kids, but I never liked it. She's like grew to love her husband, but she never liked the partnership with men. But, I'm also open to being wrong, right? I think this conversation highlights other areas where I've seen exactly what you're talking about. And I think it's going to resonate with someone deeply. I really do. I think they're helping somebody say to themselves, did I pursue this same-sex relationship because I'm afraid of something? Not because of out of love, right? But am I pursuing it because I'm afraid of something?
Okay.
I think that's powerful.
It is powerful, and it's also like I'm not using this explanation to make anybody wrong.
Right. It's an
Or,
experience.
or
I
like,
receive that. Yeah. I mean, I don't think we sound preachy. I think we're clear in our way of viewing the world. And I definitely respect and can see the excellent points in what you shared. So thank you for sharing.
yes, thank
Yeah.
you for hosting, but I have nothing to say. Okay.
I think this is powerful. This feels like a moment. I didn't think we would disagree. We're not really disagreeing, but I didn't think we would have such it's funny
Yeah,
what we're back
yeah.
and forth on. This is interesting. Okay.
It is. It's good. It's good to highlight different perspectives because ultimately everyone's perspective is limited. And so when we come together and we share, we create
Yeah.
expansion, and it doesn't, multiple things can be true at the same time, and it's all subjective anyways, right? So the other thing I want to say though is like you were talking about how people might remember having a crush since being 2 years old and no big traumatic thing happened, right? And so the way that I understand trauma is that it is an unprocessed emotional experience, and it can be anything that ranges from something that as an adult we don't even look at as a big deal to some of the more explicitly big deal type of traumas. And what I understand to be true as well is that the imprinting of certain traumatic, unprocessed experiences can happen at the time of conception, really, like when we're being carried through our mother's womb. I've done a lot of spiritual work around this, where actually myself and clients who I've worked with have gone into their subconscious mind and retrieved memories from being in their mother's womb. Because when you are in there, you're receiving all of the emotions that she's feeling, all of the programming, the limiting beliefs that she carries, right?
Yeah.
Those become a part of you. And so by the time you're 2 years old, you've been exposed to a lot.
Okay. So you don't even know what I say that so much of what you said, I say in a different way. Right. But I met a woman who worked with women who hate their babies. Hated being pregnant, did not want the child. Of course, the child comes out with things, tendencies, temperaments, right? So that makes sense. I also thought about past lives. And some people process things. There's this, a really interesting book from I think it was a psychologist, a psychiatrist, who helped patients through past life regressions, and there's so much stuff. Huh?
Yeah, there is. It goes so deep and it's so multi-layered, right? And there's no point in like clinging on to one explanation and being like, this is the way it is, because it's so fluid, just like we are, and so you just have to follow your truth and be happy, and that's it.
Yes, do what resonates with you, right? Everything is not, which I feel like is part of, there's so much diversity in nature. And so I feel like, of course, there would be so much diversity in humans, and that there can't just be one reason for anything. But do what makes you feel good. That's really the point. Because I also tell like my clients, like, we don't have to go back to childhood if you don't want to. Like, we could process all that stuff if you want to. I love talking about childhood, but we don't have to. You can literally make a decision now. I want to feel good now. What can I do? And feel good now.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Awesome. Okay, I feel complete with that part. What about you?
Okay, good. We still have 2 mirrors.
Oh, girl. Okay, yes. Okay, so the next mirror is number 6.
Okay.
And that is the mirror of the dark night of the soul, where you are faced with the illusion of this material world, and it mirrors back to you the illusion of your own ego, all of the things that we think that we are based on the experiences that we had, all of the things that we use to define ourselves, our relationships to others, our relationships to the material world can be dissolved, like a real ego death in the dark night of the soul. And we have to find out who we truly are and go within for that truth. And then the final one is the mirror of divine order, which is essentially the idea that the lens through which you are viewing the world is the same lens through which you are seeing yourself. So everything that you are judging as good or bad, you are using that same metric for yourself. And a lot of times it is based on comparison to other people and the outside world. So this mirror gives you the opportunity to let go of that, because comparison is the thief of joy. When you compare yourself, you're stealing from the only experience you'll ever have, right?
Yeah.
And so just learning how to measure your progress based on your own journey. So those are 7 mirrors. We should definitely link to that video because
Yes.
they go really deep, right?
Yes. 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 I wanted you to say them out loud so people know they existed and that they are deep. But I think if it resonates, right? Because there's so many different ways to understand yourself in this world. And I think some of those are really interesting, really powerful. And if people just spend time on one of them and did some self-reflection, I
probably get really far.
So yeah, I really like those. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay, so relationships. Don't want to talk about sexual health. No, let's do sexual health after we do sex work.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on sex work?
Oh, I used to be a sex worker.
Okay, let people know. How, what do I want to know? Go ahead. You had a thought.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I was a stripper for 4 years, and the first 2 of those years I offered full service sex work.
Okay.
So my thoughts on sex work is that just like anything else in life, there's a low octave and a high octave, meaning there's like the shadows and there's the light. So I think that sex work does have the capacity to be done in a way that is compassionate and respectful and, you know, a very positive experience for all parties. However, that was not my experience. My experience was more characterized by the shadow. So when I first started working at the strip club, I had a lot of naive ideas about what that experience would be like. I thought I was just going to get topless on stage and become rich. And yes. And it's not like that at all. You have to have sales skills, charisma, and so many other qualities that I developed over time. But at the beginning, I realized that a lot of guys were in there looking for more than just lap dances. And although I had strong boundaries for myself at first, those boundaries dissipated rather quickly because I was also drinking alcohol while working. And this was before my journey into sobriety, where I was actually drinking a lot of alcohol. And so I began doing full service sex work under those circumstances. And these were not people who I would have engaged with sexually otherwise if they weren't paying me. A lot of these situations were pretty degrading, sometimes unsafe. I always wear condoms, but I put myself in situations that would compromise my safety and integrity by doing it outside of the club and things like that. And so, yeah, my experience wasn't very positive, but once I got sober, I ended up not doing the full service sex work anymore and just learning how to get really good at being a clean, as they say, that's the word they use, stripper, where I would just, so I was a sober.
I don't think I like that word. Well, the opposite is
dirty.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, but it's a clean stripper and a full service sex worker.
Full service. Yeah, that's the more appropriate term. Okay. Full service sex worker. Yeah.
No, I understand the lingo in
the environment.
Environments, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So was there something else you wanted to say about that? Because
no, if you have any follow-up questions, I'm an open
book. In one of your podcast episodes, you had mentioned that your family was financially well off, or was it your father who was financially well off? And so I had wondered why you even sought because it's typical, right? Because I think there was a celebrity's daughter who wanted to get into stripping, and I think it was the naivety of all lights on me, and I would be showered with, money or adoration or whatever. But for people who, right, most people are doing it for survival, doing it in the meantime, doing it for a purpose, doing it to feed, literally. Yes, I just wondered how did that become an option? Because I think a lot of people who right, I watched a documentary on sex work, and I think there's most of the women, most of the men, most of the people involved sort of fell into it, right? They didn't say, this is what I'm going to do. It was like something suggested, and it's like, maybe I could try that. How did you get into it?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I think you're right. I think most people do it from a place of serious financial need. So about my story, I was born into a family that is well off, well resourced. My dad made a lot of money in his career and was able to take care of everyone. And as the youngest child, by the time I was born, everything was kind of set, like my siblings might have memories of not having that wealth, but for me, it was always there.
Gotcha.
And also, I had a lot of shame around it because I could see the ways in which it separated me from other people in school, for example. And so on some level, I resented that because I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to belong somewhere in my life, and that wasn't the case. And so when I was 19, or even earlier, I think like 18, 17, I made the decision to become independent, where I separated myself from my family and I started working in restaurants, and I completely obliterated the option of being dependent on them. And so that was my decision, and that was what I valued deep within myself. And so that was the life that I created for myself throughout my 20s. And when I was 25, I had been working in restaurants for many years, well, like 5, 6, 7 years, however long. And I was, I was allured by the idea of being a stripper because of the easy money it provided, and so, but other reasons too, like I was intrigued by the sexuality that was on display, because sexuality is something that's very repressed in our culture, but it's something that I've always wanted to be more freely in. And so it felt like at the time a way to do that as well. And I wasn't aware of so much, and so I just started working at a strip club. And then when I realized that I wasn't going to make the money that I thought I was going to make, that it, I had these maybe progressive, quote unquote, views about sex work. And I had all these different ways of justifying it in my mind. Like, sex work is just like any other service, or, believing that I was sexually liberated. And after being separated from that experience now and having done a lot of inner work, I stopped dancing like a couple years ago, a year and a half ago. And I now see that also what was true is that subconsciously I learned in childhood to attach my own sense of self-worth to my ability to entertain people. And this translated, because, for example, I was the youngest one in my childhood. And so during an inner child work session one time, I was taken back to the experience of all of my older family members wanting to play with me because they thought I was so cute, and me being a source of entertainment for them. And that was how I found my value. So these traumas can be so subtle, and for people who do come from families that are well resourced, it can be even more confusing, because it's like, okay, nobody hit me, people weren't screaming insults at me, yet the first long-term relationship I got into was abusive, yet I ended up being addicted to drugs and alcohol, and I became a sex worker, which in the shadow land, that type of sex worker. No shame on sex work.
Wait, I think I missed something.
Okay.
What did you were clarifying something?
Yeah, so I'm saying that, like, I'm saying I became, an addict and being abused in a relationship and a sex worker. And I don't mean to connotate sex worker as something inherently negative.
Got you.
Because I know there are some people who do it and
Right,
it's
like
light.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
Right. So these, like, I was really messed up. Like, I had so much emotional instability in my life. It felt like I could never find stability for so long. Right. And so just, because I came from a family that was well resourced does not mean I did not experience trauma.
Right.
Yeah. And so those traumas were also guiding my behavior and my decisions when I decided to become a sex worker. And I think that can be an explanation for other people as well, because you asked me the question, why does this happen in a general context? And obviously everyone's individual path is very different. But if we can trace it back to our subconscious drivers, then we will surely find out.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see you there. You've heard I think it's a Jim Carrey quote where he says he wishes everyone could be rich and famous so that they can realize this is not where it's at.
Yeah.
It's not where it's at. It's also a point that I like to make, right? So I'm a psychologist, so I love statistics. I had to study so many, right? Studies, memorize all these things. So I like statistics. After about $75,000, right, as a single person, the more money you make doesn't translate into happiness, right? When people say money can't buy happiness, I don't really like that saying because it took money to buy these plants. These plants make me happy, right? So there's a certain amount of money that's necessary to include the things you really enjoy in life that will lead to happiness. But after you have all those things, right? So about $75,000 for single people. After you have all those things, what then? What then? And so I really like to drive the point home that there are millionaires who are unhappy. There are people who are surrounded with so many of what society tells us we're supposed to have, and they still feel an emptiness, right? I don't know if you know Kevin Gates. I keep using this example. Oh, you do? Okay, because I love I love different perspectives. That's really it. And there's so many different ways to interpret spirituality and like your personal relationship with God. So Kevin Gates is a rapper and he was contemplating suicide, right? I don't think most people would think, oh yeah, of course he would want to die. He would not want to, right? I think it's like, this is a person who is self-made. He has come from the gutter, as they would say, who has done a lot of work to be successful, done a lot of work in his partnership. I don't know if they're partnered anymore, but just done a lot of work to become this famous person that we see. But there are so many famous people who are still stuck in the comparison trap. Who are still looking outside. Can you believe being a multimillionaire and still looking at people and not feeling good enough, not feeling right? But I think it's very common. I think it's a human experience whenever we're disconnected from God to not feel like enough, right? Not in with yourself to not feel like enough. So I'm just like, I completely get what you're saying. You don't have to have been physically, right? I work with a lot of people with severe trauma. Right. And because of the work that I've done, I know what trauma looks like, right? Like, versus, how do they call it? Complex trauma, right? There are people who've been through a negative experience that shaped their worldview. And then there's people who, right, need to see a psychologist for years because they're working through years and years of trauma from their family members who are supposed to have taken care of them, right? It's right. So I think everybody benefits from healing. I don't think anybody makes it out of childhood unscathed. I don't know anybody, right? Because humans are raising little humans. I don't know anybody who's made it out of childhood without something. And it could have been from a teacher, or it could have been from, someone at church. Like, it could be like exactly what you're saying. You viewing yourself as, wait, they're only giving me praise when I'm entertaining them. And this has shaped your worldview into this is then what you're feeding. It could be right. It could be just like that. And I don't think it's simple. I think it's insidious. I think it's subtle. I think it appears to be subtle, but it's really, really powerful what adults praise children for, that then informs how they interact with the world when they get older. So I'm so glad you made that point. Yeah.
Thank you. And I love the way that you summarized that, because it's so true. I agree.
Yes. Yeah. So money. Sure. I encourage everybody to, I've read the book, The Science of Getting Rich, where it says everybody should be rich. Everybody should be rich. Like, the best way to help people is to be rich. Rich is not $100,000, but research says 75,000. You got to focus on other things besides the things. You really have to get good with yourself. And I guess I do, but everybody's spirituality is not God, right? They have different words or conceptualizing, but when you give yourself to a higher purpose, I think that's the point. Because we're social creatures. I think that's the point. Okay. So, okay, then let's talk about sexual health. Because I think also, like, or most of us, I think I also would have been, right? I got pregnant when I was 17. Where's the sexual health there? But who told, girl, have you not been educated? That's just like personal stuff for me. I had been mostly informed. I'm not sure anybody told me the pull-out method didn't work. I don't know if anybody told me that. Well, what are your thoughts on sexual health, sexual education in this country?
Yeah.
And if you wanted to talk about Roe versus Wade.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think that is pretty backwards.
Yes. Such a small group of people saying, we want to do things we want to make you do it this way so that we can be happy, right? It's such a time. Most Americans are pro-choice. Shouldn't the law reflect what most Americans think?
Yes.
Come on now.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. So it reflects the corruption, right? Yeah, above most things, I think. Yeah. So that's really unfortunate, And my thing is, I think that doing the inner work, all of us doing our inner work, is what it's going to take to heal from major collective traumas and sources of repression and depression. We when you came on my podcast, we talked about this a little bit with racism, right? And how it's really an inside job. It starts with all of us doing our own inner work, because our external world is a reflection of our internal world. And that's true on the individual level and on the collective level. So that's kind of like my focus, is to not necessarily respond with hate and anger and rage, although those are important emotions to work through and process if that is somebody's reaction, but to ultimately come to a point of compassion that hurt other people. And these people that are needing to be so in control of women's bodies are probably enduring a lot of internal dysfunction within themselves, So that's something that I think about, but I hope that it will become accessible again. Abortion.
It will.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I view it as similar to when Trump was elected. I wasn't surprised when he was elected, because it's people digging their heels into the ground saying, no, I don't want change. Make things go back to the way they used to be. But humans are always evolving. Nothing is ever going to go back to the way it used to be. We're getting better. So this is, people are having a hard time with the change, but women have been oppressed a long time. And this is people wanting oppression to come back. But hey, we are free.
Yeah.
But so this I don't see this lasting.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when it comes to sex education, I think that that's pretty backwards as well in our culture, right? And so I am thinking back to the sex education that I experienced in school, and yeah, I actually don't remember that much of it. That's not a good sign. But I
No.
think that, condoms should be encouraged, being, knowing how to have safe sex should be encouraged. I think that learning about the diseases that are out there, because knowledge is power, right? And so I think that the more information that people can have, the better. And I also know that sexuality starts a lot earlier than our culture would like to believe. I think that when we become curious about our genitals, it happens sometimes when we're toddlers.
Yes.
And but our culture wants to act like that's inappropriate, but it's actually very appropriate. It's developmentally time. And it's like we don't do that with other things. When kids start learning how to walk and talk, we encourage that, right? And so I think that that's a source of huge dysfunction, and that's starts to exist in the shadow, right? Because we start to reject that part of ourselves, and it causes a lot of the sexual traumas that exist in our culture. People trying to express their sexuality in ways that are really harmful because they are not embracing their sexuality themselves because they were not taught how to. So that's what I think about that.
Yes, 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 I agree. I will be doing, used to do, work with teenage sexual offenders
Okay.
and survivors of sexual abuse,
Mhm.
from young to teenage. And I think there's other factors, right? Like poor adult supervision, but I think if people were discussing these things at the developmentally appropriate levels, it would be different. So I'm gonna do workshops, right? I really, really want to do sex education with kids, right? I don't know yet how that's going to happen, but we're gonna get there. But I recently bought sex education books for my niece and nephews. I had already had some for my son because, right, we've been talking about sex, sexual health, sexuality since he was young, right? I wanted to make sure he was safe because I know how, what's the word? I know that the rates of abuse are high. And that it usually happens within the family or a family friend, right? So I wanted to make sure he had words. So like my biggest recommendations for parents are say the name of the body, say the appropriate name of the body part. Don't say a pee, it's a penis. We can say penis,
Yeah,
right? You have a vagina, so you use those words because then it's really, really helpful for if something does happen. Oftentimes the worst part, the most traumatizing part or the lasting trauma, right? Not more or less, but a lot of the trauma is experienced after the incident has happened because people don't believe or understand, or the way they respond is not helpful. And so responding to a child who's using actual appropriate words is different. I've just seen it so many times. People act different when a child says he touched my penis. They just act different than, oh, he wiped my pee-pee. It's just different. So that's like another one of my soapboxes.
wow, that's powerful. Yeah, I wasn't thinking about it like that, but yeah.
Working with a crop, right, developmentally to add in more and more and more until the average age for teenagers having sex is 17, but I know 12-year-olds who have sex, right? There are 10-year-olds who get pregnant. So I'm hoping for more change in that area. I know they've been doing more sex education in America, which has helped reduce the teenage pregnancy rate. But when you look at the way our media talks about sex, everything is about sex except sex. That's what I say. Because sex is about connection, sex is about spirituality, sex is about like ascending. But the way they sell sex, it's just an exchange, or it's just a body. It's just
Yeah, instant gratification.
yeah, and I don't like that.
Me neither. No, I don't
Like,
like that either.
but yeah, we'll see. I could, right? They say representation matters. More people with diverse views are perspectives are having more power in media.
Mhm.
And so we can also tune into the one that resonates like the most.
That's right. Yeah, we have a choice on what media we
Yes,
consume, and
yes,
that is huge.
yes, yes. And I hope because I feel too on your podcast that like I don't encourage people to spend a lot of time trying to fix the problems of the world, right? Like I would like to do sex education. I probably have like 15 kids in my like workshop, but it's not my goal is not I'm gonna change the American education system. Because
Yeah,
that's not how it works. It doesn't really work
yeah,
like that. But when we
right,
focus, like you say, each individual person, our job is to get good with our inner self. And then
yeah,
that the more of us that do it will change the way the world
right.
is.
Yes, we're evolving our consciousness, and then our lived experience will follow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I encourage people who say things are so bad now to think back to 100 or 200 years ago when
Yes,
things were
really bad.
horrific, more horrific. Not that
Yes,
things aren't bad now, but things used to be more horrific. And in another 100 years, the people who are existing then will really see, even more change. But
yeah.
I think looking back is like the best way to see, oh yeah, progress has been made.
Yeah, exactly. And to be conscious of the vision that we're holding for humanity,
Yes.
because we can say, oh, things are bad and living in this space of impending doom, or
Right.
we can hold a positive vision and choose to look at the things that are getting better, like you're saying,
Yeah.
and imagine, envision, things getting even better. That's like
Yeah.
we manifest things for ourselves, and we
Right.
can manifest things for the world.
Right.
Then you get that energy.
So great. So great. Okay, we're coming to the end.
Okay, this was awesome.
What'd you say?
I said this was awesome.
Yes, this was awesome. This was really awesome.
Yeah.
I just realized the time.
Yeah.
Okay, we're coming to the end. And I like to ask questions about God. Like, my last question is really like, what do you think our purpose, like humans' purpose is in life? And then what's your purpose in life? And then we'll quickly run through like what's your definition for God and stuff.
Okay, sure. Okay, so I think that our purpose is to have a human experience. And I think that there's no right or wrong way to do that. I think that we have choices in life. We have the choice to listen to our own inner voice and our own inner truth that will guide us on a path of magnificence and will guide us on a path that is in line with our unique soul blueprint, right? I think that or we have the choice to listen to external voices to
Right.
tell us who we are and what we should want to do, be, achieve in order to find value in ourselves, in order to be lovable and worthy. And so when we're following the voices of the external authorities, it's never going to be enough. And we're going to end up feeling like we don't have a purpose in life, like life is meaningless, like we're on a hamster wheel, just getting by, just working to pay the bills, just existing, right? But when we learn to follow our inner voice, it's going to guide us in a totally different path that is in alignment with our own unique set of gifts, talents, and passions. And so how we have this human experience is dependent on how we choose to move in that regard. And neither way is right or wrong, because even if we are living on the hamster wheel or these myriad of ways in which we can live, I think that our soul is learning from it and our soul is evolving. And on the human level, we might look at someone else's experience and say, oh, they're not doing it right. Or life is so much better if you just follow your inner voice or become spiritual or whatever. But actually, their soul is just fine. They're fine doing what they're doing. And so I think that the more we let go of the construct that there is a definitive purpose or there is a definitive right or wrong way, the more peace we can have, the more we can focus on our own self. So my purpose, I would say, is to live my truth and to live it so loudly, so unapologetically, so authentically that it shows other people that it's possible for them to do the same thing, and that their truth might not look like my truth. It often doesn't, but as long as it is their truth, then they can find that peace and that freedom and that joy. So
Yes, that's beautiful.
thank you.
Just want to bask in the words, the energy from your words.
Thank you.
Yes, we're here to spread joy. I like that. Okay. What's your definition for God?
Yes, God is love. God is love.
Yeah.
Love is the highest frequency. And love is, sometimes we relegate love to a relational, situational, or conditional experience, but love is actually this omnipresent cosmic life force that permeates every aspect of our existence. And it's only our own perception that can block us from that. So there's so many ways to explain God, but that's one I'm gonna go with.
True. Yeah. I love that one too. What is the soul?
So I think our soul is our connection point to the divine. And it's like our energetic self. It's kind of like our higher self. And it is something that we can tap into when we get quiet, when we let go of the stories of the mind, and we want to find out that guidance that will take us on that journey that is totally perfect for us. Yeah, that's what I think.
Okay. What's one or two things from your current spiritual practice that you could share with us?
Okay, so I love going out in nature and singing.
And singing.
Yes, and
Singing in nature.
Singing in nature, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I love to do. Nature is so beautiful, and nature is a part of us. And somehow we have been engulfed in this illusion that we are separate from her. But actually going out and building a personal relationship with her has transformed my entire life. So nurturing that relationship through song, through dance, through making offerings, is like foundational to my spiritual cup. And I also
I love it.
Thank you.
Yes.
I also enjoy ceremony.
Okay.
So with myself, maybe just myself in nature or myself and other people, opening sacred space, calling in spirit guides, maybe calling in the elements and the directions, and allowing for a formal commune. How you say it when you communing with spirit, right? And so setting that intention and just consciously connecting to spirit in that way. And whatever it looked like, sometimes it looks like a sharing circle, sometimes it looks like meditation. And whenever it's done, closing that sacred space back up and walking away transformed.
Ooh. And this is out in nature?
Usually, yeah. Sometimes it happens on Zoom.
Okay. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I don't know the quote. I like the Bible, right? I'm not Christian, but the Bible. There's a scripture about when two people come together, something.
Yeah.
But just that we're more powerful, right? Because we're energetic. And so sharing that energy with another person just heightens it.
It does too. And it's so validating because when you get together with people who are also spiritual and who also have a connection to the divine, it does something.
It
I don't
does
know.
do something.
Yeah.
And I feel like I hope anyone watching has felt the thing here.
I know words are limiting. Words are limiting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because really time flew.
It did.
But I am so thankful, right, that you reached out to me on Instagram. I'm so thankful. I was in a receptive place to say yes. I'm so thankful that you're here again now. Yes, you are a bright light, and I enjoy being in your company so much.
Oh, likewise, likewise.
Yeah.
We talked about mirrors, and if you are a mirror for me, girl, I'm doing something.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Oh, I love it. So, where can the people find you?
Yes, so they are welcome to check out my podcast. It's called the Soulful Self Podcast, available on all major platforms and YouTube. I'm also on Instagram at I am Chelsea Cora. Feel free to visit my website, chelseacora.com.
Yay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor.